Hello, everyone. It's Jill Whalen here again in the Peace of Mind group on Facebook and probably YouTube as I post this probably in a few days. Today, I am going to answer some of the questions we had in the group as best as I can, such as it is. So let me look over. I have to look over at the computer to do this. Jessica said she's struggling with physical symptoms. Any advice? Are my physical symptoms inside out or outside in? So there were other posts about physical symptoms as well. As usual, we tend to get a lot of those because it makes sense that it's confusing. Where do physical symptoms fit in? Now, I asked somebody in the group, somebody meant, there was another question, I think, within that same question from someone else, wondering how anxiety can cause the physical symptoms. I think that was Wendy, when they don't feel anxious. So, I mean, first of all, physical symptoms, as I said in a comment, could be something physically wrong. So obviously, it's important to get checked out by your doctor if you're having certain symptoms that you don't know what they are. So I'm not a doctor, and I can't diagnose your physical symptoms or give you a reason for the cause. Even in terms of anxiety, I mean, again, I'm not even a psychologist or psychiatrist, so take what I say about physical symptoms with a grain of salt, okay? So it's my understanding of how our minds and bodies work together, and again, this is just me and my understanding. It's my understanding that our thoughts are very powerful, and they create our feelings in life. But our thoughts, as I've talked about many times, aren't always visible to us. Mostly they're not visible to us. So they're going along in the background. They kind of run our lives. Like, thoughts is what just keeps us aware and knowing what's happening in life. It's all comes to us from thought, but we don't know they're there most of the time. And so it's the same way with physical symptoms that happen. With anxiety, it's the way I see it is there might be some anxious thoughts that come into that whole thought, whatever, bubble that we don't see generally, or that just comes through our mind, and it starts the train of chemicals in our bodies. And I've talked about this plenty of times before. So, our bodies have all kinds of hormones, and I don't know what all the things are that cause it. It's a little hot here. I'm sweating, which is caused by thought too, actually, my sweating. So once the bodily functions get triggered by whatever thoughts happen to be coming through our head. But again, we don't know the thoughts are there. So it makes perfect sense to me that you could have physical symptoms of anxiety, some of them being stuff like heart pounding, headaches, stomach aches, all those, a lot of things that we associate with anxiety, and there's probably a million others that you guys have, which we don't need to discuss, but that are, the chemicals are what cause it. It's not the thoughts themselves. The thoughts just turn the chemicals on, turn on the receptors, or I don't know. Again, I'm not a doctor, but they turn on something in our brain that releases these chemicals that then can cause the physical symptoms. So that's how anxiety is related to physical symptoms. And what I've found for myself is, if I'm worried about a certain thing, especially a physical symptom, if I'm worried about a physical thing, so I'm totally focused on that physical thing, and I even have aware thoughts about that physical thing, and wondering, like, why does my stomach hurt, let's say, and notice, first I notice say that my stomach hurts, and then I'd be like, what is that? I got cancer, I got whatever, and the worry about it tends to make it hurt even more because it's releasing more and more of the chemicals. And then wondering about what's happening, and then if I was going to go to the doctor, worrying about that, and so it's a cycle. It's a non-ending cycle because the worry gets worse, the physical symptoms get worse. What I found for myself, knowing if I generally assume that whatever the pain is not really cancer or something else. I mean, because just from past experience that these things have not been not really been a physical thing. If I kind of know that deep down inside, I've learned that to just go with that and be like, and it takes my focus off it. If I just kind of be like, it's probably just anxiety or just worried thoughts or whatever it is, and take the focus. The focus goes off it then when I kind of in the back of my mind just do that, and that in itself stops the cycle for me. It's not like I can't explain it. It's not a doing anything. I just know that it's probably thoughts, and I also know, I trust that if there really is something physically wrong with me that really does need to be checked out, that the calmer I am, the more apt I will be able to, I'll know to actually go to the doctors. And this, I mean, I don't go to the doctors. I don't like doctors. I'm scared of doctors. I have health anxiety and all that stuff. So I especially try to make myself better and heal myself and do whatever it takes to not feel physical symptoms of pain. But I really do find that somehow not focusing on physical things tends to make them go away for me. And I can't tell you how to not focus, because then it becomes a doing, and I don't know what I do. I just have learned that it doesn't pay to focus on them, so I don't. That's kind of like the biofeedback with the car miles per gallon thing that I talked about the other day, and that I posted on my timeline. So let me move on along here a bit now that we've covered this physical symptom one a bit. Lots more things about physical stuff. Carol had some stuff, and I had a little conversation with her on the group. She was feeling anxious about her granddaughter's birthday party on Sunday, and she's supposed to bring a side dish and doesn't know what. I'm all stressed about it. So I suggested, something practical, like just go to the supermarket and buy something, potato salad, whatever, a cake, do whatever. To me, that's the easy solution. I mean, it's a simple thing that you just do, and it takes it off your mind. So I know that's not, she's asking more about the anxiety, but it's a story. It seems to be a story that's been created by her, by Carol, by you, Carol, if you're listening, about this whole birthday party. Because it is just as simple as going to the store and buying something. But you, for whatever reason, and I think in some of your further comments later, you've said some, possible reasons why this is a big deal, because it's family and blah, blah, blah. But again, it's the blah, blah, blah. Go back to my video about creating stories. I'll try to post it here as well, because that's the thing with all this stuff. And also, I don't know if it was Carol or somebody else said in another question about, their house was all dusty, 2 inches of dust, and they couldn't, and they're laying on the couch looking at it, feeling anxious about it. Now, me too. I'm not feeling anxious about it, but I've got dust all over the place, as I showed. It's right behind me. I showed a picture of it. I don't know if you can see it, but that's like 3 years of pollen and dust that I don't bother to clean up in my. I'll even show you my horrible, messy office just to show you. This is what I live in. This horrible mess. This room. The rest of the house isn't quite as bad, and it sometimes is. But we've been having people that have to come over once a week to visit my daughter, so I did clean up a bit. But even, I mean, I'll give you a tour someday. I'm not kidding that my house is a wreck. So is it a dirty, messy, disgusting house that can make us feel anxious? I'm not generally anxious about mine. It is what it is. And if it gets too bad for me to stand, I clean it sometimes. I don't really dust, but I might. I might someday. And that's the thing, like I might just do it. Like I talked about in that other video, from maybe a few days ago about, the one when I was talking about grinding up my flax seeds and the thing broke, the grinder, and I was like, ugh, I don't want to do this, and I just found myself doing it. And it's the same with cleaning, or whatever. Like, you may just find yourself doing it, or not. But the thing is, it's not the dirty house that's making you feel any way, because if it was, everyone with a dirty house, including me, could feel anxious, and I certainly don't. Um, So what's causing the anxiety? Again, it's the story we create around it, around the dirty house. What does it mean about us, right? And I do get this sometimes when I think about having company to my house. I don't like to have company because it is a wreck. So I do. I mean, I'm not saying I don't get it. I get it, but it's a story. It's a story I have. Like, oh, what will people think? I'm a pig, and I am. But it's coming from here. It's coming from my own insecurities about being a messy, lazy person. There's the lazy bit too, which I've talked about in another video. That I have some deep-seated feelings about the fact that I'm lazy, and so I project that onto everybody else, and that if they come into this house, they're going to see that I'm lazy and I'm a pig and blah 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 blah. But it's all a story. Which means it all comes from thought, which means at any moment it can disappear like that, and it's all because we're insecure. And we care what people think, which is ridiculous in its own right as well. Because nobody really thinks about us. Even if they came to our piggy house, right? I'll speak for myself, my dirty piggy house. And even if they think, wow, that Jill is a dirty, disgusting pig who doesn't clean her house. So what? Right? Who cares if they think that about me? Like, why should that matter what they think? The other piece of that is they're only thinking about it for that second, because then they're back to thinking about themselves. And it also, when they see that I'm such a pig, it helps them to feel better that, well, my house isn't as bad as Jill's. At least there's that, because that's what we do. We compare and contrast. But in the end, so what? Like, they don't want to be my friend because I'm a pig? I don't care. Whatever. Like, us worrying about what people think about us is just more thought, more insecurity, and more stories. Just stories. And it's all made up. And it means nothing. It means nothing in our lives in the long run. Let me see what else we had in the forum here. So I think, Carol, I got a lot of that stuff. Sharon, more physical symptoms. Daphne. So Daphne said, how do I deal with so much anxiety caused by my constant worry regarding my mom, who is 94, in a nursing home, being both blind and very nearly deaf. Also caring for my husband, who has dementia. To add to that, I'm T1 diabetic, which is being harder to cope with due to these worries. How is this inside-out thinking? This is constant and not going to get any better. I need help and advice, please. So, first of all, Daphne, that's definitely a lot to deal with. That's a lot on your plate, for sure. And I'm not going to tell you it's just your thoughts. Obviously, you have things that are happening around you, and it sounds like, you are a primary caregiver, or at least have to, be around to help and visit. And nobody likes to see their their mom's sick and their husbands have dementia, and dealing with all that stuff. That's rough. It's definitely rough. And the thing is, it's what's happening, right? It's life is part of life is people getting sick, people dying, um, and it sucks. I mean, we kind of like put it out of our minds as much as we can in this world, and it's like the one thing that's sure to happen to everyone is that they're going to die, and or get sick first. It's the one thing, like, we kind of pretend most of our lives that it isn't going to happen, and yet it's the one thing that is most definitely going to happen. And it's sad. We hate to miss to have that happen. We hate to see people in pain and all that, and we hate to have to deal with it for ourselves. But that's the key. There is it's how it affects us that is the main part. That's the hardest part, because we're always it's this is where it's inside out, where we're in our heads. It's how it's affecting our life. I now have to do all this care, and I have to be the one to be there, and I have to do all that when I would rather be fishing or whatever it might be. But we feel obligated, and most of the times we are obligated. But it's that wishing it was different. That's the part. That's the suffering part. It's the wishing it was different, when it can't be different, and the more we're able to deal with whatever it is that's thrown at us that we have to deal with, the more our wisdom can come through to give us maybe some ideas of how to deal with it maybe better, ways that other people might be able to help us, ways we might be able to get a break, things like that. When we're so caught up in the why me aspect of it, poor me, it's really hard to come up with solutions that might at least take a little bit of the burden off of us. And it's possible that that's just not even a possibility for you. Maybe there is no way. But the suffering comes from the wishing it were different. And that's the same for all the problems that we have in life, all the things that everyone's asking about. The suffering is coming because we don't want it to be the way that it is in this moment. And we can't change the way it is in this moment. We have no power over that. And so it's going to be the way it is, and we can wish it were different and suffer, or it can be the way it is and we can go with it and not suffer. I hope that makes some sense, and I hope that you are able to get some help as well. What else? Celeste, I continue to struggle with worry and anxiety about my adult children. One is addicted to pills and the other has relationship issues. So much of this information and how it's all my thoughts about these issues makes complete sense. But, and then my mind starts saying, well, this is a real issue since my son could actually overdose and die, etc. And he suggests, yeah, I hear you and I feel for you. And I often am in the same boat. Two of my kids are generally, I don't worry too much about them. But, stuff happens with them too that I do. One is a little more worrisome and with some major things that I need to worry about, or I don't need to worry about, but I do worry about. So I totally hear you. But the thing again with this is, these things are what they are. And again, it's the fighting against it that's causing the suffering. And in this case too, it's the thinking about what might happen in the future, that your son could overdose and die, and it's probably a possibility for sure, and that would be a horrible thing, but it's not what's happening in this moment. We can imagine the worst case scenarios, and believe me, I do it as well, but that's causing the suffering in that case, when we're looking to the future of what might happen, and we we're visualizing it in our head. We can see it, and we can't even imagine how it could possibly go another way. And so we build it all up. And for me, when I do that, yeah, I totally suffer. And then I might, my daughter will talk to me or whatever and be perfectly fine, and this whole story can go poof, because I've been imagining that she was totally on a downward spiral, and she wasn't, but she could be too. And the same with your son, and all the whatever problems that are going on. But I went to a meeting with Jack Pransky, who's a early follower of this understanding, a couple of weeks ago, and there was a woman there who has also been a follower of this understanding for a long time. She had worked with Jack like 20 years ago, and she had an incredible story about her. She had has a daughter who was deathly ill, with some kind of I don't know what it was, some kind of medical condition. I think she was born with it, and the doctors didn't think she'd live past, I don't know, a year old or whatever it was, something really young. And this woman, because of her understanding, just took every moment day by day and took nothing for granted with her daughter. She just, when she was with her, she just just loved her, and just was with her as much as she could be, and just loving her, and not worrying about what could be. And it's something like 16 years later or something, this girl is still alive, still has physical issues, and they're still telling her she could die at any time. But the time that they have together is precious to this woman and her daughter, and they just love each other when they're together. And she believes that it's this love that she's given, this presence, just this daughter having somebody there who's completely unconditionally loving her, not worried, because the worry doesn't help the kids, doesn't help the adult kids or any kids. And it was an incredible story to hear about this. And then I think I heard her say that her other daughter also had cancer or something, and she'd sometimes be at the hospital, one daughter on one floor, one on the other. I mean, I can't even imagine that scenario, right? So it's amazing when you hear someone else's story like that, and how that's what's helpful. And since I heard that story, that's what I've been holding on to with as much as I can when I'm with my daughter, who I get worried about. I am trying. It's hard because it's the trying part. This isn't something you can really try to do. Being present and just loving the other person, knowing that they have their own wisdom, and whatever happens, and they will be okay in the end. And that includes whether somebody dies, right? I mean, people are going to die, but what's happening now is what we have to be concerned with, and be present. If we're present in this moment, and just let our love, our unconditional love, flow through, and see through those eyes the people that we're worried about, and that helps our worry to dissipate, and it helps them. It's the best thing for them to have somebody who can see them with those kinds of eyes, with that kind of love. It's healing in and of itself. And that's what I'm trying to do, or trying to not try to do. But yeah, it's not easy, because we're human, and it's not easy it's easy to be stuck in our stories. Me too. But all I can do is try. There were some questions here. I think I could see some. Let me see what I see here before I quit. People saying hi. Hello, Celeste. Hello, Gemma, Wendy, Shirley. Gemma said, if you begin to feel the anxious feelings, is it correct to just feel them and then... is there more to that? I don't know if it ended there. I can't see this all, but I can answer online later too. Dave said the body releases adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine. Thank you, Dave. That's in regards to the chemicals at the beginning I talked about. I see a Liz. Hello, and Nikki, her first time live. Welcome. Rochelle, Lorraine. I think it's the thought of should do it, I must do it, or other people expect us to do it. I'm not sure what that's in regards to, but that's a good point of the shoulds, because shoulds, oh, I think that's probably in regards to having to clean the house and all that BS. That's it. It's the believing we should. It's the and then that's a story. The shoulds are all a big story, and so then we feel guilty. But it's all again back to insecurity. And we don't need to have shoulds. There's nothing that we should do. Our true self doesn't really give a crap if we have a dirty house. Literally, it doesn't care if we have a dirty house. It doesn't care if we have the best clean house. It doesn't care about anything. There's no good or bad from our true nature. Our true nature is fine with everything that's happening, even the sickness, death, pain, all the stuff we call bad. Our true self doesn't care. So that's why there's just no shoulds. I think it's a home to live and be happy in, and love exists in your haven, rather than having it necessarily a clean house. Yeah, I don't know if that's true of my house either, but that's okay. And Sharon, hello. So I think I've probably rambled on here long enough. I can't quite see how long. But I will end it now, and feel free to post more questions under this video or in the other thread where we were asking questions. I hope it's been helpful. I know I am broken record-ish with what I say, but it's really that simple, the stuff I say. It's all the same thing. It's about our stories, and it's about our wanting things to be different. That's the answer to everything. So have a good rest of your day, and hopefully I'll have something else to talk about tomorrow. Bye, guys, and you're welcome.